Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Devil on My Doorstep by J.L. Collins, narrated by Tiffany Morgan. Chapter 1. Winter in the South. When you're 133 years old and it's less than a week before Christmas, the last thing you expect to hear is a detailed explanation of why Die Hard is in fact a Christmas movie. But here we were. Lordy, you're just as bad as John. Just because the movie takes place during Christmas does not make it a Christmas movie. And I know Christmas movies. We have a whole collection of them at the house from over the years. I used to bake cookies with the boys, and all 5 of us would sit down and watch them each night until Christmas Eve. So, no, TJ, Die Hard is not a Christmas movie. Cinda was in rare form, cutting her eyes at her older cousin as I pushed the button at the crosswalk. TJ, who had her thin lips pursed at Cinda, scoffed. And just because you have the same taste in films as a child doesn't mean I'm wrong. Heck, even the people who wrote the darn thing say so. Bruce Willis is traveling to go visit his wife and kids during the holidays. And then the big baddie in the movie ends up taking a bunch of folks as hostages at a Christmas party. I fail to see how it's not a Christmas movie. Beside me, Gina adjusted her shopping bags over her shoulder and nodded ahead as the crosswalk light started blinking to go. They do this every year. I chuckled. I can believe it. We crossed the road and I took in the cozy scene around us. Nella, Mississippi really did have every hall decked and every tree topped. Even the shops up and down Porter Avenue looked festive with their reds, greens, and golds. And though the swamp oak trees that lined the sidewalks were bare, you'd think it was only fall and not 5 days before Christmas. Holidays in the South were milder than anything and rarely saw a single snowflake. But I drew in a deep breath and felt the taste of chilly air, the hot apple cider in my coffee cup, and the smoky brisket coming from Bubba Ray's down the street. We may have been missing snow, but we certainly weren't missing the excitement or the heart of the holidays. Behind Gina and me, TJ and Cinda were still going at it. Where's the musical dance numbers? The tree decorating? The lights? The family sitting around the table and enjoying Christmas dinner? Cinda said. It's just a dumb action movie that people like you and my husband fawn all over because Bruce Willis is in it. TJ let out an indignant noise. As if that's something to look down on. Bruce Willis in a tight, sweaty tank top? Yes, ma'am, I'll take a serving of that. Cinda rolled her eyes. You'd take a serving of anything if it held still long enough. Now pay attention to where you're going before you trip over your own feet. The last thing any of us need is a stay in the hospital because of you flapping your trap. TJ growled, but Gina stepped in between them. All right, children, no need for any of that. I think we can all agree that this is hardly the conversation to lose sleep over. Pfft, you obviously haven't seen Bruce Willis in a tight, sweaty tank top then, TJ muttered under her breath. Cinda groaned. Back me up here, ladies. Die Hard is not a Christmas movie. Right, Birdie? I shrugged, surprised to have been brought into it at all. I've never seen it, so I wouldn't know. A group of giggling young girls passed by us, each weighed down by a bunch of shopping bags. I smiled. Regardless of the topic of conversation, I was happy to be out with my friends. I couldn't remember the last time I had one of them other than my old assistant, Corinne. Being a famous illusionist in Vegas sure had its perks, but this kind of thing wasn't one of them. We came to a stop outside of the Macaroon Boutique. A mild gust of wind blew past us and sent the wooden sign with the cute macarons on it swinging. I hope y'all don't mind. I just need to peek inside real quick and make sure I have everything ready to start on those s'mores kits in the morning, Cinda said, fumbling for the keys in her purse. Cinda, I thought we talked about this. You're closed for the day, yet here we are. What happened to taking the day off?" Gina said with a hint of disapproval in her tone. Cinda ignored her and pushed open the door with all 4 shopping bags hanging off her arms. We followed behind and were welcomed with the faintest scent of sweetbread. "No need to worry about tomorrow," I added as Cinda dipped behind the front counter and disappeared around the corner. "I'll be there to help you and Sasha with everything for the tent at 9 o'clock on the dot." The sound of plastic wrap was muffled, but I knew she was back there fretting over something. When it came to her bakery, Cinda was the very definition of a perfectionist. A minute later, she was carrying a large covered bowl to the front and setting it on the back counter. I know, and I appreciate it, Birdie, I really do." She looked around the empty bakery and frowned. "I love this place to bits, but sometimes I wish it was easier to handle." Shaking her head, Cinda let out a heavy sigh and threw her purse back over her shoulder. "Say what you will about them, but man, what I wouldn't give to be able to get all the work done with just the snap of my fingers, like those witches do, I mean." The hot cider sloshed in my coffee cup, very much in danger of spilling out all over my hand. I did my best to keep my composure otherwise. TJ and Cinda weren't paying any attention to me, but Gina glanced at me before pushing open the front door. "Franny should be finishing up with her shopping soon enough. Let's head down to past presents and see if she is," she said, gesturing for us to follow. Bless her, if retirement didn't work out for her, she'd make a great cat herder. It seemed like everyone in Nella was out and about. We had to scooch out of the way of packs of people walking up and down the sidewalk same as us. You could tell the ones that were last-minute shopping, with the worried looks on their faces, mumbling to themselves. This time of year usually sneaks up on me, honestly. Without having much in the way of family and little in the way of friends, at least until recently, I didn't really have to worry about who to buy for. And to be frank, I much prefer the days of small gifts in real stockings hung over the fireplace, always with my favorite sweets at the very bottom. "Ladies," a tall man with a graying beard and ears that stuck out a little more than usual paused in front of us, smiling. "Oh, hello, Scott. I hope you're having a nice holiday," Gina said warmly. He nodded. "Can't complain too much. How are those grandbabies?" "A handful. Spoiled rotten, but that's probably my fault," she said with a chuckle. Scott laughed, and his eyes strayed to Cinda, and he nodded at her before looking over at TJ. Was it my imagination, or did he just blush? "TJ," he said a little softer, the corner of his mouth quirking up, "I hope you're doing well." The look on her face was priceless. It was sort of a mix between shocked and flustered, with the smallest hint of a blush. Cinda, Gina, and I all wore matching amused expressions. Yeah, TJ mumbled, pushing ahead and stalking past him. Before Scott could say a word, Cinda held up her hand. "Don't worry about her. She's not the friendly type. Believe me, I'd know." Scott shrugged. "If you say so. I better be off. I've got some errands to run. I'm sure I'll see you at the Winter Wonderland Fair this week, won't I?" Cinda nodded. "I'll be the one in the white tent hawking my wares. If you like s'mores and cider donuts, I'm your girl." "Noted. See you then, ladies." And with that he was strolling past us, whistling a familiar holiday tune. "Who's he?" I asked, mildly curious. I'd never seen anyone so smitten in the presence of TJ. I half wondered if there was some history there. "Scott? He's an old friend from school. Me and Gina were in the same graduating class as him," Cinda said. "Nice guy." He seemed very interested in TJ. A wicked smile spread across Cinda's face. "Oh, yes. We know all about his little crush on her. You'd think that after 45 years the man would realize she's not interested. He's been married before, but he and his wife split up about 10 years ago." As hard as I tried, I couldn't picture anyone pining after TJ for that amount of time. I knew there was a soft side to her underneath all that grumpy and irritable armor of hers, but it was deep down, real deep. It didn't take us long to finally catch up to TJ. She leaned with her back against one of the smaller chestnut oaks, staring straight ahead into the jewelry store. She gave us all the stink eye. "What did we do this time?" Cinda said, sighing dramatically as she went to stand in front of TJ. "I know exactly what you're thinking," TJ muttered. Cinda's smile spread even wider. "What? That you secretly like Scott back? Wouldn't that be a hoot after all this time?" "Cinda," Gina whispered, trying to keep everyone cool. TJ pulled away from the tree and rolled her eyes at her cousin. "He wishes, but sadly I'm not into the bleeding heart romantics." But Cinda's next words were drowned out by someone screeching. All four of us turned our heads at the same time and looked down the road toward where the yelling was coming from. Across the street was a man and woman engaged in a screaming match, and it took me all of 30 seconds to learn that the woman's name was Kelly while the man's name was Nelson, and we weren't the only people taking notice. Others paused to look around and see what was going on. TJ let out a low whistle. "Looks like those two are at it again." Gina sighed. Clearly, I was missing the scoop. "At what again?" I asked, shielding my eyes from the afternoon sun. "Bad Santa and his wife aren't exactly known for getting along, if you know what I mean," Cinda said. "The Purcells are like Nella's own Whitney and Bobby Brown. The jerk pushing people out of the way over there is Nelson, or Bad Santa as I like to call him. Kelly's his wife. They live across town from us." I let out a rather undignified snort through my nose. "Bad Santa?" Gina chimed in this time. "Every year his daddy, Petey Purcell, was Santa Claus in the Winter Wonderland Fair. He'd been doing it since we were even kids. But a few years ago his daddy passed away, and Nelson took on the role. Petey was the perfect Santa, the epitome of Christmas cheer. All the children loved him, and he adored them. He used to tell my mama that he was born to play Santa, and I don't doubt him one bit." I watched as Kelly caught up with her husband and grabbed for his arm. He wrenched it away and immediately walked into the street, stumbling as he went, and nearly ran into a car parked on our side. From what I could see, his face was the ruddy kind of red that only alcohol could achieve. Kelly was stalking after her husband with determination in her eyes from as far as I could tell. Whatever had started their tiff didn't seem to be working in her favor. Gina continued. "Nelson, however, is about as far from joyful as you can get. He's never been the friendly, pleasant type, but I think he's only gotten worse after Petey's death. The rumor is that Petey himself asked Nelson to carry on being Santa. Nelson wanted no part in it, though. He made that clear the first time he put on that Santa suit. I was there with Ruby that evening while she was pregnant with Max, and let me tell you, it was a stunningly terrible display of his character." At that particular moment, Kelly took to screeching something at Nelson's back, pointing at him as if he could see her with eyes in the back of his head. You know, Kelly sort of reminded me of one of those women you don't recognize but you know must be on one of those Real Housewives shows. Her hair was reminiscent of Dolly Parton circa 1988, closer to God than even her preacher, mind you. She spared us a glance as she followed her husband's wake, her face screwed up in a nasty scowl. "We're no fans of his at the bakery, either," Cinda said, shaking her head as the couple tore off around the corner. "Why's that?" I asked, though really it wasn't hard to see why, just from the impression I had. Sasha and I can't stand it when he comes in wanting breakfast. No, demanding it. Sometimes we luck out and he's in such a foul mood that he doesn't say a word except to bark out his order. Other times, he thinks the entire bakery is his sounding board for rants. I frowned. What does he usually rant about? Doesn't he have a job to get to? You name it, he's got a fired-up opinion on it. I feel bad for the poor folks who work at the bank, though. He's an account manager or something. Give a man like Nelson that kind of job with money and power, you'd be smart to watch out. Everybody already knows he's a snake. Here we are now. Cinda and TJ both stopped outside one of the shops that was squeezed into a smaller space between a pizza place and a dry cleaner. Past Presents, Antiques and Finds for the rest of us, was emblazoned across the front of the shop in peeling gold lettering apparently established in the mid-1970s. I couldn't help the smile on my face. Antiquing was one of those things that I ironically found joy in. So many things from bygone eras that looked old and outside of a person's frame of reference were things that were buried in my own memories, and that made for some interesting shopping sprees. In fact, from the outside I could already make out a pair of matching Tiffany lamps that I simply had to have for my sitting room. They weren't exact replicas of the two originals I had made by Tiffany himself back in 1922, but these were just as fun and colorful. Past Presents. Duly noted. It didn't take long for our missing friend to show up, though I think we all half expected Franny to be coming from Past Presents instead of from down across the street. Why did you have us meeting at the antique store if you weren't actually at the antique store? TJ asked, cocking an eyebrow at her. But Franny just waved her off and smiled. Guess who just finished Christmas shopping? This girl right here. She twirled around, showing off the thick woolen pea coat she was sporting. Everyone's all checked off on the list, so I thought I'd indulge in a little last-minute gift for myself. The rest of us stood there in silence until Cinda, TJ, and even Gina burst into laughter. Francine Payne, it's 60 degrees out, Cinda let out, clutching at TJ's shoulder. Why on earth are you dressed for a blizzard? Only then did I get a chance to take in the rest of Franny's outfit. While certainly fashionable, the warm scarf, matching hat and gloves, and trendy snow boots were a bit out of season for the day. Franny only shrugged. I can't help it if I want to look the part of Christmas. I refuse to go around in flip-flops and a t-shirt, she said, eyeing TJ, who was, in fact, wearing a plain blue shirt, some Bermuda shorts, and even flip-flops. TJ, of course, scowled at her. You know I've been running warm since the hot flashes started. It's not my fault that all my bits need some extra breathing room. Okay, now. Tallulah Jean! Lordy, TJ, warn someone before you start talking about your bits. I shook my head and looked away, doing my best not to laugh. Witches and warlocks aged at a much slower pace than normal people, so I could only imagine. What do you ladies say to some lunch out? I was thinking maybe Frenchman's, Franny said. All the way out there? I'd rather stay home and heat up leftovers, TJ said. Franny pursed her lips. I say we all head back to my place. I've been meaning to cook that chili anyway. What do y'all think? Does chili sound good? Franny looks like she could use a big heaping bowl of something to warm her up. Cinda snickered along with the rest of us. We all agreed and headed toward our cars. Gina tugged at my sleeve as the other three carried on walking, and I held back. So I was thinking we could do the thing a few days after Christmas. With everyone's schedules being so hectic around the holiday, it might make more sense, she whispered, keeping her eyes glued on our friends as they got further and further ahead. I smiled. Of course. I don't exactly have a whole lot planned, so whatever works for you. Gina grinned and put her hand on my shoulder. I know Vegas was probably one of the best times of your life, but I'm so glad you ended up here, Birdie. You're such a wonderful person." My chest constricted. Gina always knew the perfect things to say. "That's so kind of you. Don't go getting all mushy on me now, though. We have a whole big surprise to plan, and that may turn out to be one of the other best times of my life, so I'm certainly looking forward to it." I squeezed her hand, and we went to catch up with the others. TJ threw her arm around Franny. "Franny, what's your take on the matter? Is Die Hard a Christmas movie, yay or nay?" I could see Franny hesitate for a moment before nodding. "Harry seems to think so I suppose he's right." The groan coming from Cinda was even louder than the whoop TJ let out as she thumped Cinda in the arm. "Are you happy now, Francine? Now we'll never hear the end of it. She'll be unbearable," Cinda sighed. TJ smiled wide and turned so Gina and I could see it too, which was a rarity for anyone to behold. Yippee-ki-yay and ho, ho, ho. Chapter 2. Bad Santa. With the way the weather was yo-yoing between warm spring and rainy fall, it was a wonder I didn't have the flu. I pulled my favorite burgundy jacket on and rubbed my hands together. As much as I liked the thing, it was given to me as a gift from Cher after all, I was loath to wear it on mornings like this. Grifter stretched his great long body out as he stepped out of the huge fluffed pillow I'd stuck in the corner of the room for him. He wasn't always around to enjoy it, but when he did more coming than going, it was his usual haunt, and I mean that quite literally. I hadn't realized I was hosting a ghost dog in my new home until weeks after I'd moved in a few months ago. It changed a few things, like the fact that I have to limit talking to him in front of others, but he was just as loyal, if not stubborn, as any other dog. I wasn't sure if that was because he could only stay on the property, but even if I asked him, it wasn't like he could answer me back. "You're coming too," I said, shoving my feet into the rubber boots beside the back door. "The ground's probably not dry just yet." Grifter lifted his head, tilting it to one side before shaking off his morning laziness. He followed after me as I pushed the back door open. Just as I suspected, the morning's mist still clung to the grass. The patches of clover dotting the backyard showed signs of spiderweb tunnels, which I avoided as I walked over to my herb garden. Not too shabby at all, I said as I inspected some of the little bushes in the corner. The blue star's flowers were a pretty periwinkle, and some were even more of a cornflower, perfectly ripe and ready for what I needed. I snipped a few off the bush, placing them in the wicker basket I had lying nearby. After careful thought and measurement, not to mention weeks of steeping, my endurance spell was just about ready. "What are those for, darling?" I nearly jumped out of my skin and fell into the bushes. "Jiminy Christmas, Henrietta! What have I told you about sneaking up on me like that?" I screeched. Henrietta's transparent and smoky figure glided across the ground until she was in front of me. "I apologize, Birdie. I thought maybe you felt my presence." I could see why she would think that. As a witch, I'm more perceptible to energy changes and have the ability to see and communicate with the dead. But for the most part, I didn't usually hear Henrietta until she was practically on top of me. "Sometimes, but not all the time," I reminded her and regained my composure. "It's quite all right. I was just gathering up some blue stars for a spell." She lifted a pale eyebrow. "Oh, what kind of spell?" Henrietta only found out about the existence of witches after she died, and even still it came as a surprise to her that magic was real. "An endurance spell. It helps to keep my magic up so I don't drain so quickly when using it." "Fascinating," she said, completely genuine. I'd love to see how it works. Later. It's not ready yet, and I have enough plans bogging me down for the next week that I can barely think, but I promise I'll show you it sometime. I gave her a smile as I stood. Henrietta nodded. And I suppose you'll want to use it on me soon enough. Guiding Henrietta onto the light, as we witches called it, wasn't something either of us liked bringing up. It was very much like an unspoken agreement. If I guided her on, which is somewhat of a witchly duty, she'd be gone for good, and I wouldn't have her company here any longer, and she wasn't exactly foaming at the mouth to go anywhere. I shrugged. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but for now, I said, twisting out of the way as Grifter trotted past, I'm off. I don't want to be late. I might never hear the end of it from Cinda. As agreed, I met up with Cinda and Sasha at the Macaroon Boutique at 10 o'clock on the dot. Cinda was a stickler for time, and I wasn't about to add more unnecessary stress on her. She had plenty enough of that to go around. "Oh, shoot," she said, slipping behind me to grab something from one of the pantry shelves. "Please don't tell me we're running low on graham crackers." Placing a hand on her shoulder, I chuckled. "I won't, because we aren't. I just put the boxes over there," I said, jutting my thumb in the opposite direction, to make way for the chocolate bars. I didn't want to accidentally crush them. The relief rolled over her in a tangible way, and I could feel anxiety slow down a bit. "Right, I'll be out of your hair then." "Cinda, should I go ahead and start loading everything in the van?" Sasha called out from the back doorway before peeking her head around the corner. Her dark, round eyes reminded me of Bambi as she waited for Cinda's answer. Cinda drummed her short fingernails on the metal countertop, her gaze sweeping across the kitchen. "Why do I feel like I'm forgetting something?" As if she could read her mind, Sasha disappeared for a moment before coming back around the corner with a big red coffee cup and a shy smile. "Looking for this?" "Thank you, hun. Don't know what I'd do without you." She took a long sip and sighed, slapping her free hand down on the countertop. "All right, ladies, let's roll out." In no time at all, the three of us were unloading all of the baked goods and supplies into the big white tent set aside for the Macaroon Boutique. A small laminated sign was pinned to the vinyl tent to showcase the bakery as one of the sponsors of Marion County's Winter Wonderland Fair. There were other businesses like the local newspaper, a couple of car dealerships and dentist offices that were taking part in sponsoring the fair, and they all had their own little tents set up and down on either side of the path that led from the parking lot of the Lafayette Botanical Gardens to the big open lawn where the rest of the fair was being held. The day after it had opened, Gina and I ended up driving past it. In all my years alive, I'd never seen anything like it. Even from the main road, trees and bushes were covered in tens of thousands of glittering lights, soft whites and colored alike. There were cute little lit-up holiday scenes like Santa and his reindeer on top of a roof and a lovely family of snowmen. Of course, there were the oddballs, like the giant tooth and toothbrush that had been done by one of the dentist offices, but for a small-town light show, you get what you get. I helped Sasha set up the 5 different tier displays of Cinda's famous and fabulous macarons, all in Christmas colors, of course. We stood back and added some fluffy cotton and some pretty tinsel Sasha had picked up from the craft store all around the bases of them for the added holiday effect. "This is super cute," Sasha whispered to me after Cinda nearly took the both of us out, careening back into the tent with the last of the s'mores kit supplies. "I agree," I said with a wink. Once we had our tent all set up, Cinda was working fast to get our card reader and all the financial jazz I had nothing to do with finished. We had about 30 minutes before people would start coming down the lane and into the little fair, so I double-checked that each bag had a jumbo marshmallow, a decent hunk of chocolate, but not a god-awful amount, as Cinda so eloquently put it, and the 2 properly sized graham crackers. If we would have had treats like this around the holidays when I was growing up, I would have never wanted to leave. With something as sinfully delicious as Cinda's baking, you didn't even need magic.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?